So I'm going to move now to East Asia, and we'll hear from Edric Mendoza, who runs Homeschool Global in from Manila in the Philippines. Welcome, Edric.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I was saying I wanted to answer the question directly, which is, what are the top 3 lessons we have had as far as funding is concerned in our part of the world as we advance homeschooling. And the way that we've seen it, we're a fairly young movement in the world. Of course, the pandemic has changed things, but what we have tried to do in our space is we looked at the individual needs of families and then the collective needs of the movement with regards to government and leadership. So there have been 2 organizations I've been part of. One is the one Peter mentioned, which is privately owned and run. It is called Homeschool Global, and that is the organization that supports individual families' needs and helps push homeschooling in that direction. Whereas another organization, our national organization, is called HAPPY, Homeschool Association of the Philippines. That is a leaders organization that now interfaces with our local government, or national government rather. Our Department of Education helps create frameworks and really equips leaders so that as these leaders serve individual families, then they are better equipped in doing that. So those 2 organizations have had funding needs, and what I wanted to share would be lessons from those through the 10, 12, 13 years or so that we have been involved in these things. So for HAPPY and HG for short, 3 things. The first is we realized early on that our focus should really be not funding, but value. So don't focus on funding, but focus on value. What do I mean? When we were trying to kickstart things in either organization, the need to fund it was obviously present. But instead of focusing on where do we source this, how do we source this, we wanted to ask ourselves, what value do we want to bring to the people who will be we will be serving? So if it's families, what can we offer to the families? If it's the leaders and working with the government, then what value can we give there? And as to give practical things that we were able to discover, we saw a slew of products and services for families, such as accreditation services, graduation, book resources, homeschool help, consultation. So all of those in family services became our focus. And as we built those products and services and gave value, then we were able to secure funding and resources to keep that organization growing and really keep it healthy. And on the other side, for the national organization, we asked ourselves, what value can we bring that not an individual organization could not bring? So we, very much like what we heard from our 2 other panelists earlier, we banded together leaders. Back then, there were maybe only 7 or 8, but now it has exploded, as you can imagine, with the pandemic. And with those different leaders, we said, what collective value can we give to each other as leaders and to the movement as a whole? So we started creating national conferences, and that became a funding source. And even as individual leader members, because we had private organizations or groups behind us, then we were able to use that membership fee, if you will, to also move us forward. So that was one major learning. Don't focus on the funding. Of course, that's important, but focus more on the value, because when the value is clear and you're able to present it to the people you want to serve, then the funding or the money that is necessary to obtain that value becomes a byproduct, if you will. That's our learning. The second thing that we learned is don't source funding or donations, instead cast the vision. So what do I mean by that? There was a point where even at the start, we needed some seed money to get things going, right? I mean, you can't just go purely on value without any starting money. So the starting money we needed or used in both organizations were sourced by not so much asking for the money we need and justifying that. Instead, we cast a vision. And I love what Jim was saying earlier. Actually, I was taking notes. I took notes from both gentlemen. In their case, he was talking about dissatisfaction with the current state, vision of a better future, and a belief that you can get there. For us, we also use a similar approach where when we talked to some initial investors for the Homeschool Global, we talked about the vision of changing this country with a new way of learning that's family values based. And because this was a Christian company as well, then we used that and talked about how we wanted to infuse Christian values. So that vision really helped compel them to initially invest, and that helped get us started. On the other front, the vision we cast, the difference in the national organization was because of the vision that we gave to the leaders about how we could be part of history. A crop of dads and moms, even educators, who would help shape homeschooling and this new form of learning in the Philippines that would infuse values and raise up a different breed of young people. That drew them to be part of the organization and actually do it as volunteers. So for many years, the core group of people working and running and mounting these events were volunteers. And I think the upside is because the core group were all leaders in various organizations. As far as compensation and funding needs for the individuals, it was taken care of by those private organizations that they were representing, or the groups that they were representing. So that was a second learning for us as far as funding. If the first is don't focus on funding, focus on value. The second is don't seek to source the funding so much as casting a vision. So when you have the opportunity to speak to people, don't focus so much on what amount you need and kind of justifying that. Instead, give them a vision of what your organization is all about. And then what we find amazing is you get people who will now not just fund, but can become stakeholders and contributors in various sorts, not just money. The third lesson that we've had, and up to this day, this is part of the journey that I'm going through, is I like to call faith sourcing. So what is faith sourcing? As far as funding is concerned, the last tip or the last learning we've had is really, I did mention that this one organization is a Christian organization. That is also my faith background. The other one is a national organization. So it's a mix, right, of various religious background. It's not a religious organization. But across both, what I've learned personally and what I've learned with a number of the key leaders is faith sourcing. What does that mean? There's nothing like good old school praying and bringing the organization and its needs to God's. And we began to start seeing him work, in ways that just have continued to blow us away. So those would be three top lessons so far that we have learned. Again, we are a young organization or a young movement, if you will, but we have seen it grow to the tens of thousands now across the country, and with Filipino families, even in various parts of the world, learning and embracing and experiencing the benefits. So to recap, don't focus on funding, focus on value. Second, don't source or seek to source funding so much as cast a vision. And then third, faith source. Those have been powerful lessons for us in our movement here so far.